we're solving like we solved the other day. I had some over 100.
Who's best in this class?
It might have been. Guys, we don't have much time, and you do have homework, so I need to try to get through this. Okay, we're still working with quadratics. So we're going to look at factoring again today. We're going to look at quadratic formula again today. But this is more like real-life kind of applications. Okay, so you agree, like if you threw a ball, that the ball would go up and then it'd come down. Okay, so here we go. Number 1. It says the path of a ball that is thrown upwards can be described by this equation, where h is the height of the ball and t is the time in seconds. So h is the height of the ball in meters and t is the time in seconds. So h stands for height and t stands for time. Okay, so in part A, when it says how high is the ball after 3 seconds, did they give you the height or did they give you the time? They gave you the time. They gave you 3 seconds. So I know t is 3. If t is 3, what do you think you could do?
35 times 3.
Yeah, you'll put a 3 into that t, and you'll put a 3 into that t. So it would be h equals 35, where the t is, I'm going to put my parentheses down, put the 3 in there, minus 5, where the t is, put my parentheses down, put the 3 in there, and squared. Okay, I'm going to make the calculator do all of it. So I'm going to go to a calculator screen, and I'm going to put that in. I'm going to put in 35 parenthesis 3 minus 5 parenthesis 3, close it, squared. And I could do this order of operations mentally. That's not a big deal. I could do it that way, order of operations mentally. But this makes it a little bit quicker. Do you guys have it?
Yep.
What'd you get?
60.
60. Okay, so that's how high the ball is after 3 seconds. It's 60 meters. Okay, B says, after how many seconds will the ball be 50 meters high? Did they give me the time or the height? This time they gave me the height. They gave me the height is 50, and I'm trying to figure out what the time is. So if they gave me the height, where would I put the 50 in the equation?
50 equals 75.
The 50 will go where the h is. So instead of h equals, it will be 50 equals, and then I'm going to recopy the 35t minus 5t squared.
Well, if the other one was 60 after 3 meters, would you figure out how much it is after 50?
Well, I could estimate, but I just want to know for certain. Plus, I want to practice what we've been working on.
3 seconds is 50.
Okay, so do you agree that this is a quadratic? I need to make one side say equals 0. Gentlemen, I need to make one side say equals 0 no matter how I want to solve it. And I am going to suggest moving this whole side, because do you see how our t squared is negative? So I'm going to move both of these. So I want to try to do it without showing work. How can I move a minus 5t squared? Add it. And if I add it, do you all agree it would now be positive on the other side? Okay, how can I move a 35t? And if I subtract it, do you agree that it would now be a minus 35t?
Yes.
Okay, and then I'm not moving the 50. The 50 is going to stay right where it is. So it will stay a positive 50. And now the right side's equal 0. Okay, so this is where you guys need to make a decision. We can try to factor it. Some will factor, some will not. So we could try to factor it and see if it factors. Or we could do the quadratic formula. What do you want to do? Who wants to factor it? Who wants to do the quadratic formula?
Who didn't raise their hand?
Almost everybody. I want everyone to vote. Who wants to factor? Who wants to do the quadratic formula? Okay, I'm going to try to factor. Now, the thing about factoring is, if it doesn't factor, you're going to be like, man, why did I waste my time? But let's try to factor. What's your first rule of factoring? GCF. Do you have one?
No.
What is it? A 5. Okay, so once I find the GCF, I build the parentheses behind it. 5 times what makes 5t squared? T squared. 5 times what makes a negative 35t? Negative 7t. And 5 times what makes 50? 10. Okay, Okay, I'm going to cover up my GCF, and I'm going to try it again. When I cover the GCF up, 2 terms or 3? 3. So let's try A times C rooftop. What do you get if you take A times C?
10.
10. Anything that multiplies to be 10 that adds to be negative 7? A negative 5 and negative 2. Okay, so yay, it does factor. If I found out at this point right here that it didn't factor, I would have to start over and do quadratic formula. Because sometimes they factor, sometimes they don't. Can I do shortcut?
Yes.
Okay, so it would go...
X minus 5 and X minus 2.
Okay, but I'm going to use the t.
Oh, okay.
So t minus 5 and t minus 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring that 5 on down. And then I now need to set everything equal to 0 and solve it. So, does the number 5 ever equal a 0?
No.
Okay, I'm just going to ignore him. If he's just a number, no variable behind him, you just ignore him. When would t minus 5 equal 0? When t is 5. Okay, and when would t minus 2 equal 0? When t is a positive 2. So the ball will be 50 meters high at 2 seconds and again at 5 seconds. Does it make sense that the ball can be 50 meters high at 2 seconds and again at 5 seconds?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's going up and then it comes back down. Okay, C says, when will the ball hit the ground? If the ball hits the ground, do you know height or do you know time? You do know height. The height is 0. If the ball hits the ground, the height is 0. Are you okay with that? Okay, if the height is 0, I'm going to plug a 0 into this h. So instead of h equals, it's going to be 0 equals. And then I'm going to recopy the 35t and the minus 5t squared. And I'm going to work on solving this quadratic. The great thing about this quadratic, it already is set equal to 0, so I'm good there. And this looks like something that can factor really nicely. So what's your first rule of factoring? GCF, what is it? 5. You know what? I actually want to fix this. Because I want to factor it, I don't want to keep that being a negative. So let's go ahead and move this whole side. How would you move a minus 5t squared? Add it. So then it would be a positive 5t squared. How would you move the 35t? Subtract it. So now it would be a minus 35t. And then equals 0. Okay, and I only do that when I'm factoring. I really want my squared, my t squared, my x squared, my quadratic term, I really want it to be positive when I'm factoring.
Why do you want it to be positive?
Because when we learned how to factor, we never factored where we had an x here and maybe a negative x here. But if I had that being a negative 5, then one of these would have to be negative. Okay, so looking at this, first thing I look for is a GCF. What is it? 5t, and then build your parentheses. 5t times what gives that back to you? T minus 7. So 5t is the GCF, and then you're left with t minus 7. Okay, now I want to set my two factors equal to 0. What do you get if you set 5t equal to 0 and solve that? You get t equals 0. You would divide both sides by 5, and you would get t equals 0.
4t equals 7.
Yes. If you set t minus 7 equal to 0, you get t equals 7. Now let's talk about the answer. It says, when will the ball hit the ground? Which one of those do you think is when the ball hits the ground?
7.
This 7. What do you think this 0 is?
Whenever it's still on the ground.
Yeah, it's like when the problem or the situation starts. This is like the starting point, and then this is when it finally ends. So that's when it's on the ground. So I would just say 7 seconds. So the ball's going to hit the ground at 7 seconds. The 0 is when it actually starts. Okay, so we had a quadratic, and here we practiced our factoring. But we could have done the quadratic formula. Okay, I don't know if I'm going to do all of these, but let's just look at it. Okay, so number 2. An archer shoots an arrow into the air. The equation that describes the path of the arrow is h equals 17t minus 5t squared, where h is the height in meters again, and t is the time in seconds. Okay, part A says, how high is the arrow after 2 seconds? So did they give you height or did they give you time? They gave you time. They gave you the time is 2. So if they gave you the time, where do I put this? Into the t. So I'm going to put 2 in that t, and I'm going to put 2 in that t. These are easier problems when they give you the time. So it would say H equals 17. Where the T is, I slap my parentheses down and I plug in a 2. Minus 5. Where the T is, I slap my parentheses down, plug the 2 in, and recopy the squared. Okay, put that in your calculator. Tell me what you get. I would think that would probably be wrong. Just because we're talking about height?
Can't be 14.
Positive 4.
Did you put it in your calculator? Did you put it in your brain calculator?
It's just a good guess.
Well, not really. Neither one of your guesses were right. It should be a positive 14.
I meant to add a 1 in front of the 4.
Oh, of course.
Where's the thing for either?
Of course.
There's the arrow. It's the guy shooting it and it comes back down.
So 17 times 2 minus 5 times 2 squared, and you get 14. So the arrow is 14 meters high after 2 seconds. Okay, I want you to take a moment and do part B. Part B says, when will the arrow be 10 meters high? Oh, no, I don't want you to do that. I don't. I'm sorry. I thought it was the same kind of question as A. It's not. Okay, when they say, when will the arrow be 10 meters high, are they giving you the height or are they giving you the time? They're giving you the height. They're telling you that the height is 10. Okay, so if this is the height, Evelyn, if this is the height, where will I put the 10? Into the H. So instead of H equals, it's going to be 10 equals. And then I'm going to recopy the 17t and the minus 5t squared.
Then you move them over.
I'm going to move them over because I need to make sure that whenever I solve a quadratic that one side says equals 0. And then sometimes they say equals y. It just depends. So because my t squared is negative, I'm going to move this whole side. So can you tell me what it would look like without me talking about it?
5t minus 17 squared plus 10 equals 0.
That's exactly right. If I moved the minus 5t squared, I'd add it, so it'd be a positive 5t squared. If I moved the 17t, I would subtract it, so that's why it's a minus 17t. I'm not moving the 10 at all, so that's why it was positive and it stayed positive. Okay, I could try to factor it. Let's just try to factor it real quick.
All right.
Does it have a GCF?
No.
No. So next thing I would try, since it's got 3 terms, is a times c rooftop. I'm going to do it over here real quick. What's a times c?
50
Okay, and I want them to add to be...
minus 17.
Okay, can you think of any 2 numbers that multiply to be
I
50
just simply can't.
that add to be negative 17?
Can't do it. I'm pretty sure it's impossible, but I might be wrong.
You can't do it. You can't do it. Can't
We got
do.
impossible.
All right, so since you can't factor it, what can I do?
Quadratic.
Quadratic formula. All right, here we go. What's the A? 5. What's the B?
Negative 17.
Negative 17. And what's the C?
Can I use capital A, B, and C?
Positive 10. I don't care.
This is bothering me.
Should we sing our formula?
Yes!
Nine.
Yes, Miss what I said to do it. I think everybody else is just a hater.
I forgot. I agree.
I know, right? Okay.
Make them all stand up.
X equals the opposite of B plus or minus square root B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to do exactly what the formula says. It says X equals the opposite of B. What is the opposite of your B? A positive 17. Good. Plus or minus square root. Okay, where the B is, I'm going to build parentheses, put the squared on the outside of the parentheses, and I'm going to put what B is into the parentheses. And what is B? Negative 17. And then minus 4 times my A, which is 5, times my C, which is 10, all over 2A. And if I calculate 2 times A, I get 10. Okay, for the most part, the rest of this is calculator. So this is what I want to plug into the calculator.
All right, Miss Wood, I don't have any more room. Can't do it.
Well, we're going to keep writing on down here because we're running out of time. I'm not going to be able to finish this. So let's put the negative 17 squared minus 4 times 5 times 10 in the calculator.
Where'd that top go?
And it equals
And you should get 89. So x equals 17 plus or minus square root of 89 all over 10. Okay, after I figure that out, the next thing I want to do is see if I can take the square root of 89 and get something pretty. Can I take the square root of 89 and get something pretty?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make the calculator give me my decimals. So first I'm going to put in the plus. I'm going to go 17 plus square root of 89. I'm going to get that answer, and then I need to do something.
Wait, divide by 10.
Could you also do it like...
I'll do the minus 2. So 17 plus square root of 89, then don't forget, divide by 10. Okay, let's round to the nearest tenths. Which would you tell me?
2.6.
Okay, so about 2.6. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing, but minus. So 17 minus square root of 89. And then once I get my answer to that, I need to do
Oh, no.
divide by 10. Don't forget about your denominator. And that makes x is approximately 0.8. Okay, so when the question says, when will the arrow be 10 meters high? The arrow will be 10 meters high at about 2.6 seconds and at about 0.8 seconds. So sometimes they factor, sometimes they don't. And if they don't factor, we can make the quadratic formula do it.
Double that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, the only thing I want to talk about on D again is when it says, when will it come back to the ground? What does that mean again? What's 0? When what's 0?
When the x-intercept.
H or T?
H.
When the height is 0, that's when it comes back to the ground, and then I would have 0 equals 17t minus 5t squared. And then that would be a real good one that you could factor. Okay, I am going to give you 2 problems.
Oh, we don't need it.
Well, you may not, but...
You don't need it.
You don't
You,
need
you
it.
just don't want it.
You don't want it.
I know I don't. I'm sure no one wants to do math problems.
I do.
I like
Just put your money back.
I don't need math. I don't need math. I have so many problems there.
sanctuary rule,
That's what I got.
like, so you
I don't need math. I have so many problems there.
Okay, I'm going to have you do 2 and 4.
Hey, that's it? Just 2 and 4?
2 and 4.
Only?
Only.
Yeah, but like 2 and 4 has 4 extra problems. I don't know, it's cool.
Well, I mean, they take a little bit of time, but I thought that was nicer than all 4.
That's true.
Because most of the other classes are probably doing all 4 if I had to guess. So, number 2 and number 4.
I like math.
I like this goal.
Number 2 and number 4.
Those are the ones we
No.
got to?
No, those are the ones that you do.